Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of season 2. Today, we are talking about the wonderful, mysterious topic of sleep, which I know that anyone listening would have had with a child at some point, would have had a big conversation about, or lots of little conversations about. And I guess it's something that we compare ourselves around a lot, but also nodding to the mental health side. I know with my clients that a lot of people's mental states can feel worse when they don't get much sleep. But it's definitely something that they would have experienced. So I want to introduce Gemma. Gemma, could you just introduce yourself to the listeners and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for having me, Rosie. Yeah, and good to be here. So, yeah, I'm Gemma. I run the Mindful Sleep Coach. So, I'm an infant sleep coach working with families antenatally to those with 4-year-olds, essentially. And I do home visits, I work over Zoom just to, yeah, exactly help people's situation, depending on what that might be. I always kind of say, and I'll probably talk about it a little bit later, but
Mm.
there's no kind of rights or wrongs in terms of infant sleep, and I always find it's very individual for the family and kind of what good looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we'll come on to this later, but I think there's a lot of crossover, isn't there, with anyone that does any work postnatally. There is always mention of sleep or impact of lack of sleep, because whether you like it or not, no matter how your baby develops in that first year or so, or up to 5, whatever it is, even now they might not sleep well when they're older, you are impacted from it. So before we go on to, I guess, the what's normal conversation, which is what we all think about quite a lot. I just wondered if you could tell everyone kind of what your typical day looks like in your work with families, and also kind of what the most common misconception parents have about kids' sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of a typical day for me is quite varied depending on what's going on. Like I mentioned, I do home visits. So sometimes I'm going into people's homes and kind of obviously having a consultation and talking to them. I do most of my kind of work with families actually often in the evening, just to find
Okay.
around work. And if they want both parents to be there, often the evening is kind of a better time. So I spend a lot of my day writing up sleep plans, following on from consultations, and also checking in with families. So I offer WhatsApp support as part of, my packages. So I kind of like to check in with the families in the morning,
Yeah.
see how, their night's been, and kind of the plan of action for the daytime. So yeah, so quite a lot of screen time, I guess, in terms of writing up plans and WhatsApp support. And then in the evening, I do kind of venture out for the home visits or Zoom consultations.
And Gemma, do you have children of your own?
Yes, I do. So I was gonna say that kind of from a,
Mm.
business perspective. From a personal perspective, I am walking the dog, going to gym class. I've got 2 young boys myself, so I've got a 5 and a 3-year-old. Well, he's 4 next week, can't believe it. Yeah, so exactly, kind of doing a school run, pack lunches, pickups,
The
for them.
load.
Exactly, the general
So
load.
you had two quite close together, didn't you? And did you have, I guess, something I find quite a lot with everyone that I'm continuing to meet in this postnatal world is the why. So why you set up your business, because there's usually an experiential link within that formation, isn't there?
100%. Yeah. So exactly. As you said, I had my boys kind of 21 months apart, which, yeah, was very close and continues to still be very challenging, but was very challenging at the time. But
Mm.
sleep for me, my eldest was born the March we went into lockdown, so March 2020. And just kind of the postnatal support around everything just kind of stopped, or it was, over
Yeah.
Zoom, which, as we know, sometimes works really well for some subject areas, for other things, not so well. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, I found myself having quite bad kind of anxiety about his sleep in terms of, I've got the books and reading about naps and nights and kind of what he should, in inverted commas, be
Mm.
doing.
Hmm.
And a lot of those things he kind of didn't fall into. And yeah, and I had quite a lot of anxiety around sleep. So, cut a long story short, that led me to want to kind of train as a sleep coach and work with families on this. Yes, there are kind of general guidelines and things, we can look at, but working on families kind of on a case by case basis to
Sure.
help them. And that's, yeah, that's what kind of led me there, and to try and help to kind of release the pressure and the anxiety around sleep.
Yeah, it's so true. And my first child was COVID as well. She was October, so just before that March.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a much more lonely time, and there was a lot more space and time to feel more anxious as well, wasn't there? I found a message the other day. I was looking for something, when you search on WhatsApp, and it said something like I'm just really bored, and I was like, God, I don't remember. You forget so easily how it felt and
Yeah.
how easy it was just to sit and think. Like, we had so much to feel anxious about, rightly so, and then motherhood on top of that as well. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So what are the key? I think everyone talks a lot about how much sleep babies actually need, and I know there's certainly been a lot of conversation in our NCT group at time of, like, surely if they're tired, they'll just sleep. And the worry that when children don't sleep well, babies don't sleep well, they're not getting that restorative sleep for development, because there's obviously a close link. So, what could you just tell us kind of what are the key biological sleep needs for babies? And yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kind of as you say, sleep plays a fundamental role kind of in growth and development, building immune systems, memory consolidation. A lot of that does happen, when we're sleeping.
Hmm.
Hormone regulation in terms of appetite and our metabolism. So it plays such a fundamental kind of role in our, babies and toddlers kind of lives. Having said that, I don't ever want to kind of use that as a, like a scare
General. Yeah.
tip in terms of, if your baby's not sleeping, then, this is going to be happening, or they're going to be negative in that way, because, we're all on our own journey, but there is such huge, importance of sleep. And I think you said a really important thing there before, like, and it's what I thought first when I had my eldest, that surely they'll just sleep when they're tired, or, I can just kind of pop him down in his Moses basket or his crib or whatever, and he'll just be able to go to sleep. And no one kind of told me that, they might need help, might need rocking to
Yeah,
sleep.
they're overtired. When it always makes me laugh. Arlo was a very cryy baby, but people used to say to me, "He doesn't look very tired to me," and I was thinking, "Thank you for your helpful comment," but I know he's absolutely bloody shattered and does need to go to sleep, actually. But no one tells you these things, do they?
No, exactly. And like in terms of how regularly, so, over a 24-hour period, kind of newborns on average between kind of 14 and 18 hours a day, that they'll be asleep. Like their awake window is normally only kind of about 45 minutes to an hour,
Right.
which is a lot to get done with a newborn and, nappy changing and feeding and everything. But it's actually a really small amount of time that, again,
Mm.
people don't tell you. And then it kind of reduces as, little ones get older. It's about 12 to 16 hours from kind of 3, 4 months old until kind of a year. And then it changes to like 11 to 14 hours over a 24-hour period for toddlers, including naps.
Oh, that's really interesting.
But yeah, to your point, settling an overtired baby is a lot harder.
Yeah, yeah, once you get, and sometimes that's unavoidable as well, isn't it? I think we could put so much pressure on ourselves to get into a routine from an early age, and there's a lot of historical kind of cultural things around that as well, but and generational influence as well. But why do some babies sleep through the night earlier than others? Because I think, again, I feel like I'll talk about my NCT group quite a lot in this with my first, because we were in COVID and there was such a direct comparable. Although I always say comparison is the thief of joy. Don't compare yourself. But I was the really annoying one with the baby that slept all the time. And I
Okay.
didn't know how lucky I was. And everyone in the morning used to be like, "Oh, terrible night, had 30 minutes sleep." And then I just used to not say anything because I felt so bad, because she was sleeping like nearly, I had to wake her up sometimes to feed her in the morning because she was just song coach. She's just, even now she's 5, she's like, "Mummy, can I go to bed?" She's just always left asleep.
Uh,
So, and Arlo was the opposite. I've really like had 2 totally different journeys with them. So don't hate me. But yeah, I just they used to say, "Rosie, you're very quiet." And I was like, "Girls, I can't." She's sleeping, and I just felt, oh my God, they're gonna hate me because they're struggling so much. So why do some babies sleep through the night earlier than others?
Yeah, to be honest, there's lots of different factors. Like some is just kind of their biological kind of readiness in terms of depending on their weight and their circadian rhythm. So babies aren't born with a body clock telling us the difference between kind of day and night. There are things that
Yeah.
we do to help, but normally around the 3 6 ish month mark, it matures. So again, depending on when your eldest circadian rhythm might have kind of matured slightly earlier than, some of obviously like your NCT pals, like babies. Some of it is down to genetics,
Oh,
temperament.
really? I didn't
Yeah,
know that. And
absolutely.
can I ask another, just building upon that
Yeah,
question? Alba was in no rush to arrive. I wanted to have a home birth. I ended up with an elective C-section. That's a whole other different episode. But
yeah.
I got to 42 plus 2
Okay.
and mentally kind of couldn't go any further than that in terms of the risks and everything that were being pumped into my, and also physically. And I was so bored in COVID too. I'd been to too many garden centres. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I always, she was born at 42 plus 2. She was £8 5. She had long nails, wrinkly, dry hands. So she was kind of ready to come out, obviously. I think she probably would have hung on a few more days. But
Yeah.
I always wondered, because she'd kind of, I don't like using the word cooked, but because she'd had that extra couple of weeks, which is a really long time, isn't it? Whether that could have influenced how much more content she was. Because in total contrast, Arlo was brought out at 37 plus 5. And I always think in my head, God, that's nearly a month more,
Mm.
a month less in my tummy. Does that have an influence or?
Sometimes it
Okay.
wouldn't say it's kind of a hard and fast rule. Sometimes it can if babies are very early in terms of kind of their gut maturity, basically how much
Right.
develop, because a lot, not all, but kind of reflux symptoms can be more from an immature gut, which sometimes is when babies, are not inside as long. But there's no kind of hard and fast. That's just anecdotally what I've noticed, kind of, with
Okay.
kind of my clients. And from a personal perspective, both of my boys were 41 weeks and 3, so they were kind of, again, one, well, first vaginal birth, second emergency
Oh,
c-section,
really? Okay.
and kind of differing, sleeping through the nights at different times. And so it's all a bit anecdotal, I think, but yeah, so I don't think there's kind of any hard and fast research or
Okay. I
that
was
I've
interested
seen.
to know that.
But yeah, no,
And
good point.
with what you said around gut development,
Mhm.
which makes sense, would you then kind of, would that relate to? I'm just going to say that again. Would that increase risk of things like reflux and colic? Presumably, because it's the digestive system, isn't it? Ultimately.
Yes, so depending on, reflux is a kind of a symptom that happens depending on a few things. It could be allergies, it could be tension, air intake. So, but from the kind of the comfort side of it, absolutely, yeah, the
Okay.
reflux symptoms. And I always recommend to all my clients that their little ones take probiotics, and it really helps to kind of build up,
Oh, really?
little baby's guts. So yeah, absolutely, it can be a
That's
link.
really interesting you say that, because I didn't with Alba, but Arlo I do give probiotics to. But
Yeah.
that was more because he's on a long-term prophylactic dose of antibiotics. So I just liked the idea in my head of there being some support in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the other thing, like when the babies have had antibiotics at birth, or if mum has had antibiotics but at birth and then is
Yeah.
feeding as well, that can kind of transfer through. So there's other nuances there that are, kind of important to look at with comfort. But yeah, absolutely. Long-term antibiotics. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. So I know there's not a one size fits all, and I totally hear that. And you also don't want to give away all your secrets, because you want people to come to you. But kind of, I guess I'm interested in that practical strategies that you might use within your work. So, I always found, for example, drawing upon my own experience, that darkness and white noise was like the holy grail for Alba, but Arlo didn't really like white noise that much. And
Okay.
he loves the dark room, and she now likes the light on. So is there a set preference of what we should be doing, or is it just to kind of watch and wait and find out?
So on the whole, I kind of say above at the beginning, little ones can often just kind of sleep anywhere.
Yeah.
But once they start becoming more aware, which often is 6 weeks, 10 weeks,
Okay.
3 months old, then the sleep environment can become really important to I have a lot of, clients who come to me and say, "They used to nap beautifully, and then now kind of they're not settling or only sleeping like one sleep cycle." That's another thing in terms of kind of sleep cycles and development, like the
Mm.
4-month-ish mark. But to go back to sleep environment, yes, at that time, darkness, absolutely, sleep better, and it can be totally pitch black for babies. To your point, in toddlerhood, when their imaginations are starting,
Mm.
really kick off and everything, a night light can be hugely, hugely beneficial. Always recommend like an amber red night light, as it doesn't
Okay.
interfere with melatonin production
Okay.
rather than kind of a white. I mean, there's lots of very fun ones out there that our kids want, but
I know, I'm
baby,
just thinking about the Miffy one that I bought Albert at Christmas.
this is the kind of thing, like if it's not a problem, it's not a problem. So
Now, yeah,
you know what I
I
mean?
see,
Yeah.
yeah.
But if I went through loads of night lights, I remember with my eldest, and then we found one that worked. But yes, darkness, white noise, 100%. Again, as you say, some babies might not just really like it. On the whole, it does work well because it's so noisy inside us. So when they come out, kind of silence is,
Yeah, mimicking.
yeah, exactly. It's of them, but also just for the kind of like practical reasons of the dog barking, the doorbell, if you've got
Block
siblings,
out. Yeah.
just to kind of block out external noise.
Mhm.
And then the other kind of sleeper is temperature. So we want to make sure as much as possible that it's not too anything. We want to err on the side of caution, kind of a cooler room than the hotter room, because
Yeah.
little ones can't regulate their temperature until they're much older. So yes, I think sleep environment, again, there's lots of different kind of factors that I look at with families. There's not often just
One
a silver
answer. Ye
bullet. Exactly. It's a lot of kind of factors put in that improve sleep.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff I've seen a lot of stuff recently about mums rebelling against the bedtime routine and I know mums who just kind of let their kids go to bed when they want to. I guess I don't know kind of where this came from, but I've always quite liked my routine of I always try and get them in bed by 7:30 normally, but we
Yeah.
will do kind of screens off and bath now together, which is really nice.
Yeah.
PJs and that downtime before bed, and that is our routine. But I know that there are also a lot of mums with the more kind of relaxed approach. So, is there kind of a bedtime routine that's ideal and really works, or what are your views on bedtime routines?
So yeah, personally think bedtime routines are hugely, hugely important. They
Okay,
serve as a, part to give a bit of wind down to our
yeah,
children, whether they're babies or older. We all need, I actually also suggest a nap time routine as well, just a mini one, but just to give, babies and toddlers that downtime rather than just kind of going from playing, for example, to straight into the cot or like bed for
yeah,
bedtime.
yeah,
So yes, I think they are really important. And also, the older our children get, that time with you is so, so important. So a lot of sleep struggles are down to more kind of attention or, waking up, because it's such a long period of time, whether they're babies or toddlers, without you overnight. Obviously, if they're still feeding, but if
yeah.
not, it's a really long period to not see you. And
Mm,
that's mega. Like, their parents are kind of
yeah,
with their world. So giving them that one-on-one or two-to-one or two-to-two, however it is, time is so, so important, just to make they can go to bed feeling safe and secure. Uh, yeah.
I'm ready. Yeah, because even now Alba's 5 and she's dying to always be kind of older and the bigger girl than she is. It breaks my heart, but she will even say, "I have to sit with her until she sleeps now," and that's just her comfort. But she sometimes says to me, "Are you going to stay here all night?" Like you can see that anxiety coming in a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely. And mine actually, the older they've got, the actual kind of more time they want to kind of stay with them
yeah.
while
So
they're
interesting. I've had exactly the same experience, and I was laughing with Lloyd the other day because if someone had said to us before we had kids, you will have, when by the time they're 5 and 2, Lloyd, you will be in with Arlo in the double bed in the kids' room, and Rosie, you will be with Alba, and that is how you will sleep. We would have been like, ha ha ha, but here we are. We're co-sleepers now because we've learnt the really hard way, and it's our only option right now with the room we've got in the house. Like that is how we get the most sleep, to be able to go work, keep a good
Yeah,
mental state, be the best parents for our children. And we do, we alternate it, but we simply can't have Arlo and Alba in the same room yet because Arlo's sleep is still really disturbed. Well, not really, but he has the odd night where he sleeps through, but he's
sure.
still at the age of 2 and a bit. He's still kind of up once or twice a night. So we have to do what we have to do, but actually you can hear the distress in Arlo if he leaves the room before he falls asleep. And sometimes we have to, and he's so tired that he'll lie there and he'll play instead of going to sleep. Well, if we know we're tired, we'll put that boundary in and walk away. But you know,
Yeah.
Alba just will not go to sleep unless someone's with her. And there's always all these sayings, isn't there? Like, oh, you made your bed, you lie in it, and all of that. But actually, sometimes we form those routines through kind of trauma, because if we don't do that, then what we experience, not anyone else, because it's no one else's business, is it, frankly, but we can't function.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You do what, and I think you kind of said like if Arlo he's overtired, then he'll be playing. Whereas actually, potentially, if you kind of stay with him for 5 minutes, he might then fall asleep, like because he's so tired, and he's got the comfort. And it is no one's, yeah, no, it is no one's business, and you kind of have to do what works best for your family. And to your point, what
Mm,
gets you most sleep, what makes exactly be able to function and everything. So that's why
yeah.
there is kind of no right or wrong. And if you want to stay with a little one, if you don't want to, there are ways to kind of do it all, and it's just
Mm.
whatever works best for you as a family and kind of where your boundaries are and what yeah. So absolutely.
Because there is an alignment with morals as well, isn't there? And just in, building upon what we just said there, I have had people say to me, you two really need to get back in your own bed and get them two settled in there. And then you kind of have a moment where you're like, oh, do I need to do this? And you're questioning it. But again, going back to what I said, if you know that that's the only way you're going to get the most sleep, you have to sometimes stop and think, what and who am I doing this for?
Yeah, exactly. If you think just if you're feeling, "Oh, I shouldn't be staying with them," or "They have to be asleep by 7," or, we kind of put in these boundaries sometimes,
Judgments.
yeah, not really kind of based on what's actually right for our family.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, absolutely, totally. You're absolutely right. Whatever works
Yeah.
for you rather than we think is correct.
And kind of on moving on from that, but kind of in the same point, something that I always find quite interesting talking about is, say, sleep guidance. And I think there's not enough conversation pre-birth about what we're talking about today around the main things that you've mentioned, like how a baby when they're newborn can sleep in a brightly lit room. Fact, like, but there is so much that you have to discover. And some babies have colic, some babies take bottles, some babies don't. Breastfeeding is a whole other reason, and why babies might wake more in
Yeah.
those early days. I guess I look back now, and I had one. This is going to be a bit of a contentious issue, but I had a sleepy head,
Oh,
and she slept like a dream in it. And I know, and I'm not saying that people should use it. I don't even know if they're sold anymore, but I obviously never left her unattended, in it. But it was that like comfort that she needed at that time, because they're so cooped up in a tummy, and then they come out and they're. So I always say to people, like, you need to test and trial things for you. And like the sling, for example, like, again, it's not a surprise that newborn babies like to be on you and have that
of
skin to
course.
skin. I really felt that second time round because I couldn't use it with Arlo with his spine. But you have to find gadgets and gizmos safely and within reason, and obviously within your own risk assessment. But like, there are things out there that can accompany those things that you've talked. I don't know what your view is on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, from a safe sleep perspective, the sleepy heads aren't
No.
um, designed for sleep, but as with everything, we know, yeah, the situation. But in terms of, I really recommend swaddling. So
Okay.
swaddling
See,
with
mine hated swaddling. They wanted their hands up by their face the whole time. Honestly, both of mine, that's the one way that they were similar. They wanted to be, still
really
now, Alba and Arlo do not like having things on them. It's really
okay,
interesting. They did not, I tried it with both and they got so angry. They wouldn't do it.
okay. Yeah, no, exactly, and that's just another case,
Learning.
every baby's different, and like you say, you try these things. Swaddling can help a lot of babies in terms of, like you said, like they're so cooped up
Comfort.
inside. Yeah, exactly. And to kind of be all, snuggly again. Also kind of helps with the moro reflex in terms of, arms moving up. But you do have to try these things. The sling absolutely is wonderful. Of course, like newborn babies, if they can hear your heartbeat, they're close to you. Absolutely. Like
Mm,
there's all sorts of things out there. And something that I am so passionate about is about sleep kind of education in the antenatal period. And I just don't think
yeah.
there's enough, essentially. I mean, obviously, we're taught about kind of safe sleep guidelines, which is obviously so, so important. But there's so much else, even kind of about awake windows or, like I said, rocking to sleep or kind of
Mm.
potentially using the dummy. That works an impact on the sleep and just so much that we could be helping mums
Yeah, and how
think kind of,
to how to proof your mental health around, like,
yeah,
you're very likely to be sleep deprived. So what can you do? Like, could your partner do a feed, or can you catch up on sleep in the day? And who's taking your kid? Like, the practical things just antenatally are not talked about enough. And I think it leaves so much for the woman to find out and discover amongst the huge hormone drop that you get post birth. And I mean, that conversation could go on for hours, couldn't it? But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there. Yeah.
yeah,
I wanted to talk a little bit about sleep regressions because,
yeah,
again, I feel like no matter what sleep journey you have, everyone does experience that change. And I know in the postnatal groups that I do, always around the 4-month mark, there's
yeah.
always a sleep regression. So yeah, what are they and how do we navigate them?
So kind of the main physiological change, I guess, is exactly the 4-month regression. So I like to call it a progression rather than a regression because your baby's sleep
Okay.
cycles are maturing. So there's nothing about kind of going backwards. It's more maturing to more adult like sleep cycles. Essentially, little ones, newborns spend a lot of their sleep in rapid eye movement sleep, which is a lighter form of sleep. And then when we
Yeah.
go through the 4-month regression, they cycle more through REM and non-REM sleep. But what that can mean is that they're more aware when they wake through their sleep cycles. So, often more broken nights or shorter naps when before kind of they slept longer stretches. And it can be so, so hard because you kind of just come through or you're still in a really intense period.
Hell's going to say hell. But bit controversial.
I remember it so well. I remember my second and we all had COVID and like I was spending, I don't know,
Oh,
half an hour
God.
getting him to sleep for him to sleep for the half an hour or whatever. And it's so, so hard. And in that time, I always just kind of say to mums, like, please just try and be kind to yourself. It won't last forever.
Yeah.
It is really hard, kind of lean into what you have to do to kind of get through that, in terms of help or whatever it might be, or just kind of bring the barriers down a little bit. What can help is, really good sleep habits before then, in terms of kind of, in a loose routine, having a bit of a bedtime routine, having a bit of a nap time routine, those things, working on self settling if that's something that you are interested in, and if you want your
Mhm.
little one to do, that can kind of help. Sleep environment, like we've just spoke about, can be really beneficial as well. In terms of as little ones get older, there's no other physiological sleep regression, but they're more developmentally. So if little one's starting to sit up or to walk or to clap or to chat, that can really affect their sleep because their brains
They wanna
are just,
practice it.
yeah, and they want to practice it. So, those of us know that they start kind of crawling practice at, 2 a.m. And so again, it's really hard and it won't last forever. And if
Yeah,
again, we
it's
have to look after ourselves in those periods because we know how intense they are when we're in them.
yeah, it's such a cliche comment, isn't it? But I do feel like I emphasize that point a lot in my client support sessions as well around, whether you cannot find any reassurance or answer at that time, simply telling yourself that this will pass, this is not forever. And
Yeah.
even if that means you doing that each day, and knowing that it will change, whether that change will be worse or not, we can't guarantee. But, it won't be forever is a really powerful. I remember I think we used to make a joke in our NCT WhatsApp group of like, "Everything's a phase," but it was really like, everything
It
is a phase.
It is, and when you're kind of doing for the first time or, in it, you think, "Is this the new normal? Is this gonna be forever?"
Yeah.
It's not, but it is really, really hard. So I think just allowing as well it to be hard and talk to people, and if I always have a big thing of like, you know, it's hard for everyone, and if people kind of, are saying that they're kind of sailing through, it's very unlikely that they are,
Yeah, that might just be the way that they're coping, yeah.
exactly.
And on that note of how hard it can be, I remember kind of 10, 11 months in with Arlo. And the breastfeeding part, I pumped to feed Alba during COVID. I woke up, I pumped every 3 hours for 6 months for Alba during COVID. And look, second child, there's no way I'd been able to have done that this time. But luckily, one part of our postnatal journey together that went really, really well was his breastfeeding. And that, I think for him with his condition meant very little and often, as was his weight gain with his
Yeah,
conjugate. But I just wondered on that note, I knew at 10 to 11 months, I said to Lloyd, if I carry on having to wake up it was like an every hour or to 2 hours, he would wake up to feed during the night. And I was, it was always when I was just about to fall into a different
yeah,
stage of sleep for myself. And it became really anxiety provoking. And I remember saying to Lloyd, I will lose it if I carry on like this. So I made the decision kind of 11 months in, right? For me, again, I'm not saying this is all my personal experience. I'm going to have to transition from breastfeeding now because I think that this is the reason why he's waking. And, if he can take a bottle, like I can pump and you can leave one out and I can get more sleep. Or so I think we introduced a formula bottle kind of before bed at that time. But it just makes me think about the feed and sleep connections because those that have breastfed will remember the kind of there were some points in my experience where he wouldn't nap unless he had fed directly and I'd placed him down. And if I was lucky, he wouldn't wait when I put him down. And
yeah.
I know so many people that have had that experience. So if we could talk a bit about feeding and sleep connections.
Absolutely. And, feeding to sleep is such a natural, thing that a lot of us do, and especially in the early days. Because yeah, why not? It's a great way to be able to, kind of get little one to sleep. They're so safe with us. It's never a problem. Some babies can be fed to sleep through the night, or sleep, decent length naps. A lot of babies that I kind of work with to get to a point and actually they're waking, to your point, kind of every couple of hours. I know Arlo's potentially maybe, kind of
Yeah,
different
a different
rate
case. Yeah.
and taking, able to take in kind of
But I've got loads of mums now coming along to my Thursday group who are on 90-minute wake ups and they're just
exhausted.
shattered, obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And that's when I, kind of see people and people come to me and say, I can't do this anymore, and we then look at moving away from feeding to sleep, kind of another way to enable little one to self-settle to sleep. It doesn't mean removing all night feeds. It can if you want to, and depending on age of baby and how
Right.
they're weaning and everything. There's loads of it. I kind of say until little one's on 3 meals a day and we feel they're eating a substantial, they don't kind of need the calories overnight,
Okay.
for the milk, but that can be 9 months plus. Others do drop their feeds actually kind of earlier, but if we kind of wanna force it, so to speak. And yeah, so we teach, them to self-settle in another way, which there are kind of various different methods in terms of we move from feeding to rocking to kind of
Right.
patting
Right.
and moving that away in a gentle, way. There's some families I work with kind of on interval methods. We kind of go in for a few minutes and go out and soothe little ones. So there's various different methods depending on lots, the baby's temperament, kind of timeline. Some people, say I'm going back to work in 2 weeks and
Yeah, practically have to. Yeah.
I can't work with this little sleep. I just need it, to happen now.
Mm.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the most common, things that I work with my one-to-one clients on is
Yeah.
how do I move away from feeding to sleep, because it was been absolutely fine for the last 6 months and now it's just
Yeah.
unsustainable for me. I am just exhausted.
The sheet comes from under your feet. And I know that a lot of people that I've encouraged to go and seek some help support with sleep training, I think again, the training, I've just said it there, sleep training. I think a lot of people, I hope you won't mind me saying, automatically think I'm not going to a sleep trainer because they're just going to get me to let my baby cry out. And I don't want to do that. It's not an option. So
Yeah.
what were your views around that? And what would you say to someone who might be thinking of coming to you, but just doesn't like the thought of being cruel? Or it's so easy to feel mum guilt, isn't it? Around this, I don't want to hear, you don't want to hear discomfort. We're trained into solving discomfort, aren't we? So what would you say to that?
Yeah, and I think you make a really, really important point there, Rosie, in terms of people feel that sleep. I mean, I prefer to call it sleep coaching rather than training. 'Cause I like
Mm.
coach the parents in terms of how to do it. But it's not. It can be closing the door and letting your little one cry it out, but that was nothing that I would ever suggest. And I think not many kind of sleep coaches out there these days would suggest that now. Um, and there are ways to do it. Kind of gently and responsively, kind of I say, and it's you wish that you're so right. We are conditioned in terms of, oh, we don't want to kind of hear them crying, or that's why I use different methods. Some always want to be with their little one. They're like, I don't want to leave them. So hence we
Mm.
do the rocking and the patting and kind of a bit like what we were talking earlier on this episode, like staying with them to fall asleep. Yeah. And also, we've gotta take into account our own well-being as well. I know we're really afraid, and there's no studies, kind of out there in terms of that sleep coaching has any negative effect on attachment or children's cortisol levels.
Mm.
Really appreciate is, a factor that parents speak to me about, but also we've got to look after our own mental health as well. And if we
Yeah,
are really suffering from lack of sleep, there's no.
we won't be the best parent we can be. Same as if we don't attend to our emotional needs. I say this to parents all the time. Like if you listen to the guilt and you don't follow a more positive pathway, your baby will pick up on your anxiety. They'll pick up on your sadness. And it's so tied in with sleep, isn't it?
Exactly. Exactly.
So what's one small change in your eyes that can make the biggest difference? Hard
Ooh,
question.
I think one thing is to not like a practical tip, but more of a, your child's sleep is not a reflection kind of your parenting. Like I have a lot of people come to me and kind of say, am I being a bad parent for it's all the guilt, like for being a bad parent for not doing sleep coaching or for doing it or for that my baby wakes up 10 times a night or it's no reflection on your parenting at all. Like I just want that kind of reassurance because there's so much that we benchmark ourselves against and kind of
I
worry
know.
worry about and it's not a reflection of your parenting. If you want help and you want to change, then you can absolutely. But also, it's this comparison. If you are happy with where you're at, that is absolutely fine. There's no
Yeah.
need to do
It's
anything.
your journey. And I love some real case scenarios. Could you give a couple or one real life example of sleep challenges that you have helped solve with your work?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So just trying to have a think. At the moment, I'm working with a 7-month-old little girl, and she actually was sleeping in her crib absolutely fine when she was a bit younger, but over the last couple of months, it's kind of crept in more and sleeping in mummy and daddy's bed, and yeah, feeling to sleep up a lot. Parents are just absolutely exhausted. Mum's still on mat leave, but and dad's working, and they're both obviously absolutely pooped, and they're ready to have some independent sleep. Mum was a little bit apprehensive kind of about the interval method. Dad was very keen for it, but mum was a little bit apprehensive. So we had a really thorough talk about in terms of kind of the timings of how long we would leave her little one for, and obviously when we go back in. And on like night one, she did amazingly a couple of weeks ago. Um, so we just did short intervals, like 3-minute intervals, before going back in and reassuring little one. And yeah, she kind of settled really. She responded so well to it. And now she wakes up twice a night for feed, is settling in her cot, napping independently. And they're having one contact nap a day still because that was
Mm.
really important for her because that's what they did the whole time before.
Yeah, and they're lovely, aren't they? Contact naps. Again, there's a lot of stigma against that as well, but that's the real magic that right there.
exactly. And, on consistency is super important, but I kind of say as long as you're kind of doing it for, like 85% of the time, there is that flexibility for the rest of the time to, yeah, like I said, if you do want to have that nap or if you want to go, where, whatever. But,
Yeah.
yeah, so she's doing amazing. So she's settling and I think she responded to it so much better than mum was quite worried, but knew she needed change and she responded to it so beautifully well. And yeah, so they're really happy. There's another toddler that I'm working with that had chronic a big thing I work with toddlers is getting out of bed and coming into mum and dad's
Well, I was
room.
going to talk about early rising and toddlers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we kind of had both of that happening and then early rising at kind of about 4 a.m.
Oh,
Um, yeah, which is a horrible time of day for anyone who my eldest used
mm.
to wake up early, and again, another reason why, and it's just made me
Killer.
so killer. Yeah, so we kind of looked at bedtime routine like we were talking about earlier, made a few tweaks, had some one-on-one time with parents. We used, some reward charts and bedtime trackers, and that's the thing with toddlers as well. There's lots of extra kind of resources that
Yeah.
we can use to really help fill I call like the love bucket and control bucket to kind of fill up both of them. And yeah, we did a bit of settling when she woke up at 4, so not to get her up because early wakes can become a habit really, really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't want to reset our body clock essentially to think that that's kind of morning time.
Normal. Yeah.
So staying in the dark and do a bit of settling there, bringing bedtime earlier. Actually, that's another kind of common perception is that if I stretch my little one and put them down like later, 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 they'll sleep later. Which actually, in
Ah,
practice, we need to get, but they need to be tired enough and the sleep pressure has to have built up. But
right.
often an earlier bedtime doesn't equal an earlier
It can
wake.
breed a later one. That's interesting to know.
So
Mm.
yeah, and now she's sleeping. Yeah, she's sleeping till 6:30, and they're over the moon, and she's not getting out of bed. So happy
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. So, and I guess there's that message, isn't there, around um, it's never too late. I think some
No,
people can feel that judgment more if their child's 2 or 3 or 4 and still not sleeping. And I've met so many people who are actually totally put off having another one because they're like, I genuinely couldn't do that again. And I always find that so sad. So I think it's a really important message to emphasize that. And I'm probably taking words right out of your mouth here around it can be better and to reach out if you're struggling. And I think that could be applicable to both the work that we do, can't it? It's totally overlapping in that sense.
100%. And it's never too late if you're feeling that way, or if sleep. As I said, I mean, I work up to age 4, and yeah, I've worked with plenty kind of 3 and 4 year olds. Often, sometimes starting school and then sleep can go. It's changes in toddlers, preschoolers' lives. Sometimes, obviously, has such a big impact, and it can come out
Mm.
in this. So really, and toddler sleep is really emotional, kind of behavioral. So we really look at that as a bigger picture rather than just kind of necessarily. I mean, yes, we might tweak bedtimes and nap times and stuff, obviously if they're still napping, but we look at it really on a whole and kind of like an emotional behavioral level. But no, it's never too late. And yeah, if you're struggling or need help, and there is help out there.
So I presume you don't agree with the whole idea that some children are just bad sleepers.
Apart from if they have some discomfort, so if they have any kind of reflux symptoms or allergies or intolerances, that can really affect.
Interrupt. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% can interrupt their sleep. So, like, if I work with families and we actually uncover the reason I think their sleep is so broken, or, this isn't working, or is because of kind of an allergy or something, then we will, or, tongue ties and air intake, which is a whole other thing in itself, or,
Yeah.
you know, then I would encourage them to kind of work on that. And then we will come back and work on sleep because there's a child needs to be as comfortable as possible to work on sleep. Otherwise,
Physiologically. Yeah.
really, it's just not worth it for anyone. So, but no, but apart from that, if little one is, kind of comfortable, then yes, there's so much we can do
Yeah.
to
That's a
make.
nice message. And it's nice to hear that you obviously sometimes might say to parents, it's not the right time, which is,
Yeah,
what we should be doing as professionals. So, Gemma,
yeah,
I feel like this episode could have been about 2 hours, and I hope we've covered some of the questions that came into me, listeners from Instagram story I did this morning. Thank you for those. But I'd love to actually do another one and maybe pick a couple of deeper topics later in the year and yeah, and regroup because there's so many things that have come to mind since we've been talking.
Yeah, no,
Thank you so much for your time. And I just wanted you to share where listeners can find you. Obviously, when I post the episode, I'll include all of it on there as well.
yeah, no, well, thanks for having me. It's been really lovely, and I would love to do, yeah, some deep dive, absolutely, because
Mm.
they're very meaty topics. But yeah, if anyone wants to kind of check me out or get in touch, my Instagram is at the Mindful Sleep Coach. Lots of free tips on there, and my website is themindfulsleepcoach.com. So if you wanted to work one on one, or yeah, I've got a few blogs up there, then that's where you can access me.
Amazing. Thank you so much to Gemma, and thank you for everyone who tuned in today. I hope there's some takeaways for you that there is for me, and I'm out of the baby bit now. So thanks ever so much and see you next time.
Thank you.